Nice to see you, John, and nice to see all of you. We appreciate that you take some time out of this amazingly beautiful day here in Brussels. We have a very concentrated program for you today, full of value, and hopefully you'll get back out into the sunshine before too much longer, because it's important to enjoy that too. John, listen, I cannot tell you what an honor and a privilege it is to sit here on stage with you today. John Collison, if you don't know him, is a great European, a superb entrepreneur, and hopefully by the end of the day, someone whom I can count cautiously among my friends. John, you and Patrick, your brother, have done amazing things. You took European ingenuity and talent and put them together behind a novel way of facilitating online payments and commerce and serving customers, which is, I think, a not unimportant part of your story. The results have been extraordinary. In 2014, this little tiny startup became one of Europe's first unicorns when Stripe's valuation surpassed 1 billion euros, with headquarters in South San Francisco and Dublin. Today, the company, of course, stretches around the world with operations in 47 countries and annual sales of almost 5 billion. But here you are today in Brussels, a homecoming of sorts. And on behalf of the Lisbon Council, let me say it's been a pleasure to work with you and your team on the Scale Up Summit here today. We're delighted you can be with us here personally to kick things off, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts throughout the morning. Not just to celebrate Europe's achievements, although I'm sure we'll do some of that, but also to talk, as we like to do, about how we might do it so much better. We've presented some new ideas in the policy brief, When Europe Scales, and we're looking forward to your unique perspective. And on that note, if you don't mind, I'm going to dive right in. Rather famously, in 2010, you and Patrick went to Silicon Valley to found Stripe. I'm wondering, would that still be the case today? Has enough changed in Europe you could imagine founding a company like that here? And if not, what still needs to change?
So thank you. Delighted to be here, and especially delighted to be here. Spending a lot of time with comparisons to the US as we talk about this competitiveness stuff. But there's nothing old in the US. Like, old for them is 1800s or something like that. And so it's very nice to be in Brussels. And I think there's actually some inspiration for us here, where, as you guys know, this was the site of the 1911 Solvay conference with all the physics bigwigs. And there's two takeaways, really, or two themes I think we can draw out of that. One, obviously, is the Solvay was an industrialist, not a physicist. They're Belgian chemicals, are a Belgian chemicals company. And so I think there's an important lesson in businesses having this outward perspective, I guess, in his case, the frontier of physics. And here we're all talking about, everyone has their particular knitting that they stick to and their particular lane in payments or AI or whatever it is, but also thinking more broadly about what we can do to improve the European startup competitiveness landscape. The other thing, of course, we can hopefully take some solace in is that they were all here trying to solve quantum physics. We are just trying to solve the European competitiveness agenda, so much simpler, hopefully, than other tricky problems that people have tried to solve in this building. To your question on starting Stripe in Silicon Valley versus here, look, we started Stripe in 2010 when it was night and day here in terms of the startup ecosystem in Europe, and it's been very motivating for me to see how that has progressed. I think we did benefit in the US, and we still benefit today from some of these aspects that we're talking about here today, and that David was talking about in the report, where when you think about, we're spending a lot of time talking about talent, the not optional campaign, the ability to actually kind of hire all the best people from all of Europe. Stripe benefited in the early days in the US from being able to hire really talented people and give them equity. I think that's something that correctly there's a lot of attention on. And then similarly, we didn't have the right product out of the gates. We got a really early product into the market, and then we learned from our customers, and there were so many startups and scale-ups in the early customer base that we had. And so again, I think similarly, there's a huge amount of focus in the report on how we enable simpler incorporation and how we enable just a blossoming of so many more startups. So anyway, I think we benefited from a huge number of tailwinds in the startup sector there. and I think luckily there's a lot of focus on them here right now.
Okay, thank you for that. The policy brief, as you rightly point out, takes a rather unusual take on European regulation. Usually we bash it all the time, but in this particular instance, we've said some of it has actually been quite helpful. And I'd like to ask you about that. It says in the policy brief, and I quote, "The rise of fintech is largely due to effective EU-level regulation, pardon me. Is that true? And concretely, what does that mean?"
There's certainly very significant truth to that, where, and we saw it in the data in the report, where basically, Europe is outpacing China, say, in the creation of unicorns within the fintech category in particular. And so we're seeing a huge growth of the fintech sector in Europe. And even as you just look at specific examples, we have lots of really successful neobanks in Europe. That is not the case in many regions around the world. I think the best thing that we do in Europe at a regulatory level, and the thing that we should do much more of, is we create pan-European standards. We say that things should not be separate regimes across every single member state. But and again, PSD2, like you mentioned, was an example of that, where you're setting a Europe-wide directive, and this is how things should work. This is how interoperability works. And so creating standards such that you eliminate the differences between various member states, and you give people access to a larger block in which to compete. I think that's really powerful when we do that. And for example, one of the things I'm really excited about now is this discussion of the 28th regime and the idea of having more pan-European standards when it comes to company formation and incorporation and things like that. And so that is absolutely true within fintech, and I think we could take that energy and deploy it more broadly.
Terrific. Are there any particular sectors where you think these lessons might be applicable, in addition to fintech, of course?
Oh, I think we could do more in fintech. I think for sure crypto, I think, and I think again, company formation and scaling, hiring broadly. I think oftentimes we don't necessarily need kind of sector-specific rules. We need to simplify and smooth the ease of doing business generally for companies.
Terrific. Listen, you obviously grew up in Ireland, but you have a very global life now, global lifestyle. You run a global company. I'm just wondering, when you come back to Europe, what do you see here that's unique and special to the European environment?
I mean, the thing that Europe has always had in a business context is the incredible human capital and just a profusion of great ideas and potential founders. And I think one of the saddest things sometimes is when we see ideas that are developed in Europe, or IP that's developed in European universities, and then people feel like they need to go elsewhere to commercialize it. And so whenever I go to anywhere in Europe from a work point of view, I'm just amazed by the talent and the caliber of the people I meet. And so again, I think unlocking that human capital that we have here, I think that should be the focus, and I mean, to a considerable degree is the focus.
Terrific, thank you. Listen, there's a lot of entrepreneurs and people who work in this area here today. They've shown their commitment by joining us on this beautiful sunny day to talk shop. I'm just wondering, how can we help? What could the contribution be of the kind of people who are assembled here today? How can we help to make this vision real?
I think there's two things I'd say. One is, we're always partial to the Picasso quote that when art critics get together, they talk about form and substance and all these kind of things. And when artists get together, they talk about where to buy cheap turpentine. And so I think there is a turpentine-like focus that's important on the very minute issues that are facing founders, and some of them were mentioned in the report that I really like. It could be as minute as getting rid of notarization requirements. I mean, we should not tolerate these, job protection rules, and instead really simplify the path for many common business processes. But it's like really specific things like that. I think we should be demanding changes that are specific and not general. Oh, we should make it easier. It's like we should demand specific changes, like get rid of notarization requirements for processes A, B, and C, as opposed to broad, vague kind of demands. And the second is, it is easy for things to take a long time. It's easy for things to move quickly. That is a choice, and you can probably guess which I'd prefer.
Terrific, thank you. So what I hear you saying, if I can rephrase, is the details matter, and it's important to come to the discussion with concrete ask, not just the aspiration that we want to be more competitive, because of course we do. The question is, what concretely are we going to do about it? And I agree with you. There's a lot of devil in the details on these things. Look, 26 years ago, European heads of state and government met in Lisbon, in Portugal, where they declared the Lisbon Agenda to make Europe the most competitive and dynamic knowledge-based economy in the world, capable of sustainable economic growth with more and better jobs and greater social cohesion. The agenda's long since come and gone, but it remains the mission statement of the Lisbon Council. I'm just wondering, do you think we'll ever get there? Is it possible for Europe to become the most competitive and dynamic knowledge-based economy in the world?
I think it's absolutely possible, and I think we can underestimate the changes and the level of integration that have happened over time. The EU, we did not just decide there was going to be a fully completed EU and then everyone sat down and did that. The EU has been a gradually built project where we have chosen deeper levels of integration at various moments in time, where we've chosen customs integration, we've chosen free movement of people, and we've chosen a banking union, and we've chosen a common currency, and each of those has been a progressive step. And so I think oftentimes the next step maybe feels, the previous things we did feel inevitable. Of course we all, got in a common currency or something like that. That was a huge step at the time, and, probably felt very unlikely a priori. And so I think we can underestimate the level of change that is possible.
Okay, terrific. I think the policy brief singles out 3 areas, and I'm just curious, which among them you think is most important, where you might put all of, I don't want to say your bets, because that's not what we're talking about, maybe where you would put your efforts: completing the single market, developing talent, and a better use of digital technology. In particular, as David put it so eloquently, for RegTech, using digital technology to reduce administrative burden. Where might one start on this?
Your unfair question asking me to choose. Like they're all pretty.
You can pick all 3.
They're all quite good ideas. No, look, if you had to make me choose, I would say David's point that the single digital market is more a vision than a reality is not only something that really resonates with us, but if you look at what Stripe does, a huge part of the product, we're allowing people to accept payments from across the EU, from across the world. We're allowing businesses to run global businesses and simplify that. And so Stripe as a product is in essence trying to create a single digital market. Within the EU, more than half are, the sales that businesses on Stripe have are cross-border, which is very much not true for sales of businesses just generally within the EU. And so people use Stripe as a tool to get a little more standardization than they would otherwise in the wider world. All of which goes to say, I think that idea of the single digital market is extremely close to our hearts at Stripe. It's something that we're trying to create from a product point of view, and it's something that we touched upon some of the ways we might get there. But I think many of the good ideas that we're discussing are under the umbrella of actually creating a single digital market.
Terrific. Well, I already asked you the question on behalf of the audience: how can we help? But let me put the same question to you in a slightly different way. Why was it important to you to bring so many people in Brussels together at this particular moment for this particular topic to talk about these things?
I think we're at a very useful moment where the discussion has shifted. I think the Draghi report has been instrumental in creating some common knowledge on this competitiveness issue, where everyone was having these pairwise discussions previously and trying to, find out how everyone else felt and things like that. I think it's just really crystallized this common perspective on common sense, things that people who have done business around the EU already knew, and made it something that is, fairly widely believed and widely discussed. And so now we just got to get marching.
Terrific. Listen, a lot of times people come to these conversations and step all over the person they're interviewing with their questions. So I wanted to give you an entirely open-ended one. What will you take away from the discussion that we've had so far, and what messages would you like to leave this room with today before you leave? And I know you're joining the next panel, but what would you like to leave with the room?
I think, again, going back to the maybe where we started, the 1911 Solvay conference, there was lots of really open-ended questions. How do we reconcile, quantum physics and relativity? And it's really not clear where you go from there. We'll probably need a few more physics conferences before we get everything all ironed out. And they didn't have all the answers in 1911. I think we're in a fortunate position where there are many steps that everyone can agree on the utility of and the productivity of, and we just need to get stuff done. And I think we shouldn't let up on the accelerator.
Terrific. Well, as I'm sure you know, they're still arguing about reconciling quantum mechanics and relativity. I had hoped at one point they would solve that in my lifetime, but it doesn't look like they will. But let me just say, John, thank you so much for being with us, for the excellent collaboration, and in particular for making us so proud, because what you've done with Stripe really is a remarkable achievement. And we're delighted that you can be here and share some of that experience with us today.
Thank you. We really appreciate you pushing on this topic, and we're delighted to be your partners.
Well, let's go. Thanks.